Hi, I'm Jess. I'm going to share some somatic approaches to working with back pain. I'm a dancer, I'm a dance maker, I'm a dance educator, and I grew up doing gymnastics, so I'm no stranger to back pain. And many years ago, I was looking for a way to fix this pain, and I began studying somatics. And I got much more than that. So since my approach to pain in general is different, my relationship with my back, my spine is really different, and the way I am in my body in relationship to others is constantly changing, and I know that because of what I've learned from somatics. Somatics is a word derived from the Greek word soma, which means the living body in its wholeness. So it's about the body as something that one experiences, the body that is changing, rather than a body, a thing to do things to or disconnect from or shut down, or a body as object. And there are many other definitions and ways of describing the field, which has many different schools of thought within it. And one of the things that's great about somatics is that there's no one way to learn or work with any aspect of your body-mind. It's an inside-out approach, so it's more about being in relationship with your living, breathing, ever-changing body-mind than it is about fixing any one part of you. And I'm going to read, this book is called The Politics of Trauma by Stacey K. Haynes. And I'm just going to read something from an author who was writing about this book. Her name is Adrienne Marie Brown. And she wrote a book called Emergent Strategy and another one called Pleasure Activism. And she describes somatics as a freedom-inducing framework. The central idea is that the natural living body, with its sensations, memories and emotions, triggers and pleasures, is a complex system that carries our whole lives, including trauma and healing, boundaries and risks, patterns and transformation. And so we're going to move slowly and easefully, and it's not about stretching or fixing or doing it right. It's about listening. So one of the ways somatic approaches can help alleviate back pain is that they give us tools for listening to our spine and all of its parts, hearing what it has to say, what each part has to say, and learning about subtle sensations and movement habits and postural patterns that might lead to pain, and being able to identify them before the pain even starts. And so that's just one of the ways that it can help support with back pain. And so for this exploration, I came up with a series of things that start with the letter P, 5 different things that we'll work with. The first being posture is a process, not just a position. The second, parts of the spine. So we'll look at some basic anatomy so that you can get more familiar with different parts of your spine and get some visuals and some sensations for the different areas. And the third is a fancy word, pandiculation, the pleasure and patience of a whole body yawn. So it's a type of yawning. The fourth, pondering patterns. And the fifth is practice, practice, practice. And the fifth will be kind of sprinkled throughout each of the other 4. So posture is a process and not just a position. So we're going to start by studying what it feels like to be in what we think is perfect posture. So go into what you think is good posture, how you've been taught, right? You might even hear a voice in your head, someone telling you different things about your body to get into the right posture, the correct posture. And as you are in this posture, whether you're standing or sitting, notice what happens to your breathing in this posture. Notice whether you feel like yourself or not in this posture. Notice whether you feel like you could actually have a conversation with someone in this posture. Notice what muscles you're holding. Notice if you feel you can see the room easily or not, or the space that you're in. And then let that go and go into a posture that feels really natural and just right for this moment. And think about those words that were in your head or those cues that you were trying to embody when I said perfect posture. I've heard pull up, shoulder blades together, shoulders back, chin up, tuck your butt under, pull your belly in. So I was doing a little bit of all of those. I was noticing that I felt a little tighter in my throat when I was talking. I was noticing my breathing wasn't quite as free. And I totally felt awkward trying to have a conversation with you or talk with you in that perfect posture. It also felt more fixed. I felt a little less dynamic, like my arms were not really able to move without feeling robotic. And so we're going to do an exercise called the small dance, which comes from contact improvisation. You may have done it before, but if not, don't worry. I'll walk you through it. And the small dance, in my experience, is one of the best ways to experience posture as a process. So you're going to go ahead and put your feet just beneath your hip joints, wherever you think your hip joints are, and have them kind of facing the same direction, kind of parallel to each other, and kind of shake it out a little bit, let go of the tension of the perfect posture. And go ahead and feel your head right on top of your rib complex, right on top of your pelvis, which is right on top of your femurs, and so on, all the way to your feet. And then go ahead and close your eyes if you're comfortable. You can also do this seated if you don't want to or can't stand right now. So with eyes closed, noticing the tiny movements that are happening just to keep you standing. As you notice your breathing, that creates movement. And movement creates breathing. Notice where your weight is on your feet. Try to have it about 60% on the balls of your feet and toes and about 40% on your heels. And notice if you overcorrect and go 80-20, and see if you can get really subtle, feeling that only 20% difference. And noticing the tiny movements that are happening automatically. It might feel like a sway. It might feel like little reflexes, like your leg muscles kind of twitching. It might be even smaller than those things. See if you can feel the tiniest movement in the greatest number of places, rather than feeling a lot of movement in one place. Letting your arms feel heavy and relaxed. And then go ahead and check out your knees and lock your knees Just notice what that does to your pelvis and the small dance in general. And then unlock your knees. And you want to barely unlock your knees. So lock them again. And then barely unlock them. And notice with unlocked knees, they're still straight, but with unlocked knees, how does that free up the small dance, free up your pelvis? I have all kinds of sound in my environment. I have dogs barking, I have a plane going overhead. And I can even notice the small dance responding in some ways to that sound. Almost like all sounds are made of vibrations. It's their own small dance. And I can feel those vibrations going through my whole body. Vibration as small dance. And then open your eyes and see if you can still feel the small dance with eyes open. You might have people near you. You might see them, say hello. You might definitely look around your space. Look around you, orient yourself, and see if as you see things, specific things, I see the leaves on this tree, and can you still feel the small dance, even especially if you meet eyes with someone else. As I look toward you, I can still feel the small dance underneath as I stand. And so in feeling the small dance, I can feel my posture as a process. If I go out of the small dance, the more official, symmetrical small dance, I could drop into a posture that feels really comfortable to me. I can look over at that sound of the car starting that I just heard, and I can still feel the small dance underneath that. I can feel the small dance underneath this. And the more I can feel what's happening internally, that small dance happening internally while I'm connecting with something outside of me, for me, that feels like a more genuine connection, right? It also allows me to set a clearer boundary. So if I'm in a space and I want to set an energetic boundary, a message that says, I'd like to be alone or I don't really want to connect, the small dance is a way for me to drop in further. So I think it's a little harder to keep the small dance happening and my noticing of the small dance while I'm in a relationship. I think that's a little bit harder to do, but it's still really valuable. It's equally valuable. But if I really drop in to the small dance, and I'm not focused on the things around me, it can set an energetic boundary that I might want to set. And so just knowing that small dance can be there no matter what it is that you're doing, what position you're in, whether you're sitting or you're standing, it's something to notice at any time so that you can feel your posture, but also your person in process. So just remembering, next time you think about or judge or consider or try to fix your posture, remember that it's a process and that posture is continually unfolding. The skeleton's name is Wolf Osteomi. And we're going to take a look at Wolf's spine. Remember that Wolf's spine is probably created from a combination of many different spines, some kind of average. It's not your spine, it's not my spine, but it's a map to help us learn about the bones of the spine. So let's just start, and remembering where you had a sense of your spine ending or beginning, however you want to think of it, at the top, the sense of the top of your spine. You can see how high up it goes, and if you look here from the side view, it's ear level. And if you find this little bump on the back of your skull, just reach back and find that. You kind of go in from there. You can also feel your soft palate in the back of your mouth and just go back from there. And that's this first vertebra here. And that's the top. And then just take a look at the whole spine. So zoom out and see all of the potential for collaboration between different parts of the spine. So many joints, so many vertebrae, so many possibilities. And so then we're going to look at a few areas of the spine. This top area is called the cervical spine. It kind of has a little bit of a curve in this direction. And there are 7 vertebrae in the cervical spine. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And right around C7 or cervical spine 7, 7th cervical vertebra, they start to stick out a lot. So see if you can reach back and in the top of your neck feel a bump there and feel something that might be somewhere around C7. So you can touch that in your own body, mapping it in your own body at the same time as you're seeing it in Wolf's body. And then the next area of the spine is called the thoracic spine. And there are 12 vertebrae in the thoracic spine. And we know because they're connected, we know it's thoracic because they're connected to ribs. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And you can see that that curve goes a little more this way. So we have this first curve, second curve. And then we get to the lumbar spine. And there are 5 vertebrae in the lumbar spine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can see, like many things in the body, it balances again. So we have a curve this way, and then the lumbar curves this way. And then below the lumbar, we have the sacrum. And this is the area where the spine connects to the pelvis. So you have the sacrum, and that's 5 vertebrae, but they're fused together. So they don't have joints in between them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then below that, we have the coccygeal vertebra. And there's anywhere between 3 and 5 coccygeal vertebrae. And you can also just call that your tailbone or your coccyx. This whole area is the coccyx. Tailbone. And you can see how the tailbone is higher than your sitting bones. These are the bones you sit on. So it can just float freely as you're sitting or standing. And again, noticing all of the possibilities here, even between the vertebra and between the vertebra and the ribs. So if you look closely, you can see up here in the cervical spine that there are facet joints. These are called facet joints. And there's facet joints on either side of each vertebra, so you can see that. And there are facet joints that are kind of more in this direction in the thoracic spine. And then down here in the lumbar spine, there are facet joints here. And then multiple joints between the ribs and each vertebra. So the idea here is that if you could move just a little bit in a whole lot of places when you're moving your spine, rather than trying to do all the movement in one place or in one area of the spine, then we have a healthier distribution of labor all throughout the spine. So just looking at that complexity, it's not something to manage, it's just something to allow to serve you. And one more thing to see here, in the front view, are the bodies of the vertebra. These are the bodies of the vertebra. And so before we talk about the bodies, I want you to feel again this part. So reach back to your lower back and see if you can touch the vertebra in the back. They may feel separate, it might feel a little more clumpy, but the bone that you can reach is the spinous process. That's what this little sticky outy part is called. spinous processes, all the way up and all the way down. And then you can see from the side view here, turn all the way around, that where you would touch your spine at the spinous process, there's quite a bit of space till you get all the way to the front of the spine, which is the bodies of the vertebra. And the skeleton is named Wolf after Wolff's Law, and it states that bones change their architecture or their shape and size based on the forces that are placed upon them, or the weight, which is why the bodies of the vertebra are thicker and bigger than the area behind, or even the spinous processes. And you can also see that the bodies of the vertebra at the bottom of the spine, where the spine is bearing more weight, are larger than up here in the neck. So these vertebrae are holding up the head and neck and the contents of the skull, and then they get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because these vertebrae are holding up the skull, the contents of the skull, the rib complex, the contents of the ribs. And so, again, looking at this side view and feeling in your own body, or imagining, because you can't touch it, imagining how far forward the bodies of the vertebra are. And what is it like? It's a really subtle sensation. What would it be like for you to let your weight move through the bodies of the vertebra rather than having your weight in the back of the spine? Let the back be back there and let the weight be here. And then one final piece, and that is these little gelatinous looking things. This is the intervertebral discs. They're fibrocartilage, or like cartilage in between your vertebra. And the outside is harder, and then right in the middle of this cartilage, which we can't see, is a little like a jelly donut. It's like more gel-like. So I like to think of these as padding and spacers for the vertebra. In this model, the spinous processes are cut off in the vertebra, except on this one. So I'm going to pull it out so that you can see a bird's eye view of the vertebra. You can also see, before I do that, the spinal cord and the different layers. This represents different layers of the spinal cord. And then this is a spinal cord cut so that you can see where it is. Another thing to see here is the body of the vertebra, where the weight is meant to go through. And this is the intervertebral disc, body of the vertebra. And then the vertebral foramen, which is this hole in the middle. And there's one in each vertebra. And these holes line up to create the vertebral canal, which is the home of the spinal cord, the precious spinal cord. And then this is that spinous process that you can actually touch if you reach around to your back. So again, this is where we want the weight, right? We don't want the weight where there's a hole or not as big a bone. So just feel that in your own body. So go ahead and take a yawn if you can. I heard that yawns are contagious, so I'll try to yawn. And then the idea is just let that yawn spread into your whole body. Kind of like when you first get up in the morning. Or think like a baby or a cat. Yawn sends you into a different position. And the key with pandiculation is it takes as long as it takes. You're patient, you follow the direction that your body wants to go in as you stretch and breathe. There's a lingering quality. Your eyes might tear up a little bit. That's a good sign. It means you're really in it. So the next time you find yourself in pandiculation, because it's a really natural thing, it's not something that we have to practice on purpose, but when you find yourself in pandiculation, can you let yourself take the time it takes to get through the whole thing, however long that stretch wants to go? Pondering patterns. What do you do habitually? What do you do in your posture? What are your postural patterns? Do you tend to have a side that you favor? Does your head turn one way or another? Do you have patterns that maybe are related to things in your past, even traumatic experiences? Maybe you have patterns connected to what you've been told about how you should be in the world and your body. Patterns related to work or environment, the chair you might be sitting in right now. You have patterns of muscle tension or release. They could be related to judgment of yourself or judgment that comes from others. So just take a little time, and you can even take a little time to write down what your patterns are in relation to your spine. So you might think that you slouch, and if so, what part of your spine do you slouch in? Do you tend to have more of a rigid or fluid spine? Do you have patterns of holding in certain places in your spine where they don't move as much? Or parts of your spine where maybe you move too much, or all the movement happens maybe in just one part of your spine. Do you have patterns in your spine that have to do with how you present yourself to the world? Parts of your body that you might want to hide or show off? And movement or kind of rigidity or stillness, fixedness in your spine. What are your patterns around that? So just take some time to consider that. Because once you start to notice the patterns, then you can start to have a little more agency, a little more choice around going with the pattern or not. So considering also what patterns have served you and when do those patterns serve you, and what patterns don't serve you and maybe they used to and don't anymore. So it's a self-study, and as soon as you start to recognize it, you may recognize it, oh wow, I do this all the time and I didn't even realize it. And see if you can just get curious. If you notice yourself judging it, that's also okay. Don't judge the judgment, right? It's like sometimes when we don't realize something we're doing, it's almost like seeing yourself on camera or seeing pictures of yourself. You're like, oh, is that really me? Or hearing the sound of your voice recorded. It's awkward. But I always, when I feel that sense of awkwardness of seeing myself in a new light, I always think I'd rather be in that discovery than just stay in the dark and not know. So just noticing that, in particular, which patterns are serving you, and which patterns, especially if they're ones that you think are leading to pain or not allowing you to live as fully in your life. If you notice those patterns, try to recognize that they're there for a reason. Your body-mind is super intelligent, and those patterns showed up in you for a reason. So thank them. Thank your body-mind for creating that pattern for whatever it was needed for, and that's a huge part of the process of letting it go and changing.